Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
My message this morning is titled Vulnerable Vibrations. And this came to me because I've always had a hard time saying vulnerable. It's like been this word that you kind of struggle with. And so I thought, okay, I guess I need to do this message because I need to practice saying vulnerable. But also, it's a good spiritual practice to stay in the idea of being vulnerable too. So, the feelings and emotions that go along with this is important for us to explore and see what is all going on. And it's Mother's Day, and we all know that we have this, I don't care if you're a mother or not, but you have like an intuitive vulnerability that is there that sends out vibrations and stuff. And if you've cared for anybody, then you've picked up on those vibrations. Like, if they're in trouble, or that if you need to call them, or if you're sensing something. And that's a vibration that we all send out. We send out vibrations all the time. So I looked up the definition of vulnerable, and it sounds really kind of harsh, but here it is. Susceptible to physical or emotional attack or harm. And it can also mean in danger, in peril, in jeopardy, at risk, endangered, unsafe, unprotected, unguarded, exposed, defenseless, powerless, helpless. And I don't think any of us wish to be in any of that kind of behavior or be in that situation where we feel that way. It isn't good. It isn't where we want to be. But understanding this definition is important for us to move into the idea of trust and trusting situations, because nobody wants to feel powerless or feel like they're in harm's way or feel like they're in danger. Nobody wants to feel that way. And sometimes these situations show up and we're not quite sure how to handle it or what we should do. Or maybe we get the sense that we're unsafe or that we're in harm's way. And it's just that feeling that we have. And a lot of times, too, it could just be a state of mind that we have around this whole idea. So we have to really look at it and explore and kind of define for ourselves. And there's two sides of the coin of this. The two sides of the coin are being vulnerable can be an emotional roller coaster that we can get swallowed up in, can it? We let our guard down, we feel like we're letting our guard down, and then somebody takes advantage of us, it feels like we're going like this. But not being vulnerable can prevent us from enjoying life, believe it or not. And we definitely need to be cautious in situations, but we also must be willing to ask ourselves, what am I going to miss out on if I'm not vulnerable, if I don't open up to allowing life to happen with me? And I think we've all started a relationship where things were going great, you just felt so good. I mean, it could be that you were in love, it could be that you were just a friend, like to hang out with or whatever. And things are going really good, and then all of a sudden things start changing. You're getting to know this person a little bit more, or you're seeing things that you're not really agreeing with, or you really don't like their behavior, or maybe they're negative on things that they say, and you start thinking, oh my gosh, how did I get to this point with this person? And we have to kind of explore and know that if we stay open and we're vulnerable with people, that sometimes it might not be the person we want to hang out with 24/7 or all the time or whatever. And it's still our choice to be able to decide if we want to hang out with that person or not. But sometimes when we have opened up, it might be because the other person is trying to have too much control, or it becomes abusive. It could be abusive physically or just emotionally, where they're verbally abusing you or trying to manipulate you or make you do things that you shouldn't do or any of those kind of things. And it can feel hurtful. It can feel like, I don't want to be open anymore. I've exposed myself, and now look what it's got me. It's got me in this crazy relationship that I don't want to be in. And you quit answering the phone, you quit hanging out with the person, which is probably the healthiest thing to do. But then you start feeling like, why did I trust them? Why did I think it was okay to be? And sometimes what happens, we end up with the same person over and over again, don't we? Because that's what we're used to. We start attracting the same kind of people because we haven't explored what it is within ourselves that are bringing these people to us, because it's something within us that we are accepting. And on the vulnerability side, we might be feeling like, oh, we're just a sucker. And so I don't want to be like that, so I'm going to hold off. I'm not going to be friends with people. I'm not going to get in a conversation until I find out for sure who they are or what they are or whatever. And that's going to hold you back from living life. And who wants to live like that? Nobody that I know. And I think sometimes people think of vulnerability as a weakness. But Psychology Today says this: vulnerability isn't weakness, and it's definitely not insecurity. In fact, vulnerability and insecurity are on the opposite ends of the emotional seesaw. Think about that. Vulnerability, insecurity, not the same. Insecurity is a debilitating awareness of one's limitations. We don't want to be insecure, because then we think less of ourselves. Actually, thinking about being insecure, you start taking your self-esteem and pounding it down, actually. And where vulnerability is the ability to see one's potential for growth. When we are vulnerable, we see that we can engage with other people, that we have more confidence, that we feel comfortable around other people, but we have to have that like kind of a balance in where we go, so that we don't end up feeling like we're a sucker, or that we've gone down the wrong path with someone. But all we have to do is think about the idea of not being hurt or abused, and a trust. Bring forth trust. And because, even when our trust has been broken, it can be hard to be vulnerable again. We could be in one relationship, and when we're in one relationship, sorry, I just looked at Sandy and I was laughing. Anyway, you could be in a relationship, and then you don't want to trust, and the trust gets broken. But that doesn't mean you can't rebuild that trust, or that you can't trust the next person, because each and every person is different, right? But we forget that. We just start wrapping ourselves in this blanket of thinking we're wrapping ourselves in security, when really we're wrapping ourselves in a blanket of insecurity, because we can no longer move forward with someone new or someone else. And it keeps us from experiencing love and life and everything good that wants to come in, rushing into our lives, because we know God wants to supply us with all this good. And so the fear that shows up prevents us from being our true selves. This then leads us into an emotional state of uncertainty, which can feel uncomfortable and unsure, and this is not where we want to live from, is it? Nope. We don't want to be unsure. We don't want to be uncomfortable. I mean, I think a lot of people struggle with coming to church because they have a fear of being the uncertainty of being in church. Who are these people? How can we be with these people? How do we even know these people are going to be okay? And then even when you walk in the door and you're thinking, okay, this is where I want to be. But then every day or every week you have to re-look at taking that breath and trusting that the people that you're going into a room with are going to still be there for you and care about you. And here we do. I mean, I really think there's not a problem at all with that. And but we want to make sure that we're not exposing, like I call it an emotional exposure, where we feel like, I can't go in there because they might think less of me, or they might find out about something in my past, or they might think this about me. That's what that insecurity does. It starts putting all those doubts and causing us to have whirlpools in our minds of anxiousness and stress that we don't need, do we? Who wants to live like that? Take a breath and know that the presence of God is within you, and that it is in the person next to you too. And guess what? The fear kind of dissipates away, and trust comes rushing up, because trust is good. The fear we experience will make us want to have control. And guess what? We don't always have to have control over everything. That's the thing. When you have that fear pop up and that distrust, then walking into a place like this, you'll start thinking that that you have to have control. You have to control the whole conversation. And I've seen this happen with people. They walk into a situation and then they just start talking 90 to nothing. Have you ever been around somebody like that? Yeah. You start talking 90 to nothing because you're afraid that somebody else might ask you a question, subconsciously maybe, just subconsciously. Ask you a question that you don't want to answer because you're afraid they're going to find out. They're going to find out who I really am. But you know, I call that senseless babble when we just start talking 90 to nothing out of fear, because what are you doing? You're not revealing anything. Well, you could be. You could get to the point where you're talking so much that you start revealing little things, and then that's what you're fearing. So what are you doing? You know, stuffing more fear into you and saying, oh yeah, I gotta have this fear. No, we don't want to go there. My kids do that sometimes when they're around me. They start telling me something. If I let them talk long enough, they usually reveal something that they didn't want me to know, you know. And it's kind of like, okay, this is the fear, you know, speaking here. But, you know, we don't have to have control over everything, and that's a hard thing to let go of. But that's part of that whole idea of insecurity and self-esteem. And that's why we have to change how we do things. You know, once I was in a relationship that made me very fearful. And it was, it ended up, you know, at first it was all sweet and, you know, bring me roses all the time. This before Reverend Warren, even though he brings me roses all the time too. I don't want somebody to get mixed up. But it got to the point where all I wanted to do was stay curled up in bed and not go anywhere. I didn't want to face anybody or do anything because it became so abusive and so unhealthy. And my own self-esteem was you know, shattered. It was horrific. And so the thing was that I had been vulnerable up until that point. I was enjoying life. I was having fun. I didn't let other people, you know, make me feel like, oh, I can't do that because they might think I'm less than. No, I was just who I was, doing my thing, enjoying life. And that's where we need to be, right? But what happened was I started, because of that, I started losing me, and not in a good way. You know, I felt like I was no longer happy. I was nobody wanted to be around me. You know, even in my lowest point, nobody called me, nobody checked on me, and it was like, well, gee, you know, I've been here for all these people, why aren't they here for me? Well, you know, I was doing it to myself, wasn't I? It was my own insecurity and lack of self-esteem that took me down. No. But I didn't like the idea that it was changing me. And it was by the grace of God, really, that I finally took a breath and said, this is not who I want to be. I want to be me again. I want to be back to me, being confident and feeling like I can enjoy life and I don't have to worry about what somebody else is thinking or what somebody else is doing. And I sure didn't want any guy in my life that was, you know, going to cause me some pain and sorrow, physically or emotionally. And, you know, I was so glad that I was me again and I could be alive again. And God showed me that. God showed me that, you know, that I didn't have to lay in the bed and be so sorrowful. But the fear was there and it was real. But the minute you realize that God is always with you and that you can get yourself up and you don't have to live that way, and that's not who you are as a spiritual being and as a person, a child of God, you are not that. So knowing that, you can move forward and see something better for your life. And there was no more fear. That's the beauty. No more fear. And I felt like I was back to being me. And, you know, I'm not ever going to go down that path again because it wasn't any fun. And I didn't enjoy it. And I knew that wasn't me. And that's where you have to go. And I'm sure I'm not the only one that's had that experience. I saw you raise your hand, Mickey. But it's like we all have had that experience at some level, where it might have just been a friendship, like a girlfriend friendship or a guy friendship or whatever, that where you started to feel like, hey, this is not healthy. Take back you. Feel that you have all that you need to stand up and be who you are. And that's being vulnerable. That's letting those vibrations out from you that are good vibrations. Who wants to be around somebody negative? Not me. I want to be around the people that are vibrating good energy, that send that good energy, that know that are happy that you're doing something good or that you've had something come into your life. We want to lift up and be in that. But there is a serious fear there is a common fear of vulnerability. The fear might be real, but when we are open and willing to love and be loved, the risk dissipates and the reward is confidence and assurance. Who here doesn't want to be loved? And who here does not want to love? I don't think any of us. We all want to be loved. We all want to love each other. You know, that's one of my core values. Let's love, you know. I say I love you all the time to everybody because I think that's a powerhouse gift God has given us that can lift up and allow us to feel good about who we are. And it's not just something you throw around. It's something that is true and real and should be a part of our everyday living. And if you have a hard time with it, I always say start with just saying, I love you to yourself. Write the word love over and over again. Post it everywhere so you can start to actually embrace that. That wipes away fear, that wipes away doubt. It opens you up to vulnerability and allows you to send out vibrations that are fabulous and good and pure. Because you see, truth does not hurt and truth does not cause any pain. The truth of love is there, and you will not have that in your life if you're loving, if you're sincere. Truth always lifts us higher. So the question becomes, why do we fear vulnerability? I love this little thing I found. It goes, where courage meets fear, vulnerability. So you're releasing that fear and it builds up courage when you are vulnerable. And that's where we want to be. We have to see us for who we are and know that that's okay. If somebody else doesn't like something that you are or that you are physically or emotionally or mentally or spiritually, that's okay. You are who you are. And that's all that matters. The rest of it will transform and grow and you'll be okay. In reality, who we are is who we are. And that's the truth, isn't it? Yeah, we can get smarter. Oh my gosh. We're going to sing praises here in a minute. We can get smarter, we can grow spiritually, we can get in better shape, we can do all these things. But guess what? Who we are is who we are. And we get to embrace that and love that. I said that because Doris is coming in the door.
Did you know that?
No, I didn't. Yeah. Did you?
No.
Oh. But holding back any part of us, it can be difficult. It can really hinder our own growth. And we don't want to do that. We don't want to hold back. You know, we do this sometimes when we act one way with one person and one way with another person. Have you ever found yourself doing that? And then pretty soon you've got like 5 people that you're acting different ways with. And then you have to keep track of this all in your head. And then you have to say to yourself, well, let's see, was I that way with that person? We create extra chaos and stress for ourselves when we do that. But if we are who we are and come from that place, guess what? None of that will be there, will it? None of that will be there. Yay, Doris. She's back. So we have to create, not create those webs of stress and chaos. We have to stay open and receptive and feel safe, not unsafe. Feel worthy, not unworthy. And feel trustworthy, not untrustworthy. I don't even know if that's a word. Is it? Well, somebody might say, well, you know, what if I get taken advantage of like the last time? And I'll tell you, you won't. Because once you have that self-awareness that you're going to be vulnerable, be who you are, express from your openness and self, you won't go there again. Because good always comes in and lifts you up another higher notch, and you'll see it the next time. You'll maybe start in and then you go, wait a minute. This is another copycat of the person I ran from the last time. I'm not going there. You know, you'll be whatever it takes, but you'll be able to see the good and the bad. That's a good thing about vulnerability. It actually, and I don't like to say bad. You know, we don't like to say bad, but we actually can see beyond the physical realm of it all and go beyond that. So we have to look at intimacy, believe it or not, because vulnerability and intimacy kind of go together. They really do. Intimacy means a close familiarity or friendship, closeness, or private, cozy atmosphere. We know that, intimacy is intimacy. And from the internet, it goes on with this. Intimacy and vulnerability are not opposites. On the contrary, they are the same thing. When we say we want to be intimate with someone, we mean to be vulnerable with them. We want to lay down our armor and defenses and expose ourselves to another person in a way that feels safe, secure, and trusting. That's what intimacy really is. I know we all tend to think of intimacy along with the idea of sex, which, yes, that can be. But when you think of the real word intimacy, it's about being vulnerable and opening up to yourself to someone else and allowing them to open up and be themselves to you. And when that happens, you're building a relationship that is strong and that is trustworthy and that feels good and that you can trust in that situation and move forward. And it's a beautiful thing. It's us becoming authentic in who we are instead of creating all these different characters that we've lived. No, come forth and become who you are and be who you are. Be an authentic person. And it also brings forth that spiritual beingness that we long for, believe it or not. As spiritual beings, we long to be able to trust and love and share from our hearts. I know you feel this at times, don't you? Like, gosh, I really just want to be able to love people and trust people and be lovable myself. And then we find ourselves trapped in something that is keeping us from being able to even stand up straight or spread our wings or spread our arms and feel comfortable. Guess what? That's not how God intends us to live. We are to be here to be open and spread our wings and open ourselves to being vulnerable with other people, but knowing that we can trust our own vibrations, our own inner sense of who we are. And that makes a big difference. A tool we can use to trust is that inner knowing and open up to vulnerability is through the vibrations we feel. And we all feel vibrations. We all do. Now, there might be times where you're thinking, oh, I got that one wrong. I didn't pick up on that. And that's okay. We're growing. Just like we are spiritually, we are growing in how we read vibrations. From Fillmore in the Revealing Word, Fillmore wrote this. Vibrations, the rate at which all forces move. And he wrote this a long time ago, but he said, one of the greatest discoveries of all ages is that of physical science, which shows that all things have their source in being in vibrations. I don't know if you've known this before, but it's true. Every single thing has a vibration. We're all energy. We've talked about this before. Everything is energy. That bench you're sitting on, that pew, that's energy, believe it or not. And just because the way the energy comes together and forms the shape or whatever of that pew, it's still energy. Believe me? I hope so, because it's true. They've proven it scientifically.
Yeah.
Everything. So if everything is energy, then we have to decide what energy and vibrations we're putting out there and how we can be authentic in the vibrations we're sending out. And just like this church, when we walked in here the first time, we still felt good energy in here and good vibrations. And I think that there was a lot of love in this church before we ever got it. So we had kind of a foundation that maybe not in the same beliefs we believed in, but still that foundation of love was there that we instantly charged this place with everybody coming together to work on it and make it happen. And so, that can happen in our everyday life. It can happen every moment of our day with every breath we take, I like to say. And we have to make sure that our vibrations are not of fear, that they are of vulnerability. It makes a big difference. 2 weeks ago, Reverend Warren and I went over to Snellville to get this pool deck box. It's right outside the door here. And what we got it for, I was looking on Marketplace for one that was inexpensive because, they can run $200 and I didn't want to spend $200. But we got it to put all the TV trays in. and you can lock it. And so if you go over and look at the conference room, it looks much better. It's all open. And so all the TV trays fit in this box out here. But we went over there and got it. And we got back, and when we opened up the box, right here, there was pieces broken. There was no screws in the box, and the hinges were missing for the lid. And we were just like, oh. But the weird part was, when we walked into this place to get it, we were both picking up vibrations. We were both feeling uneasy. We were both going, okay, maybe we should just leave. And then, this guy was talking, and he wanted me to give him the money before they brought the box out and all this. I mean, it was just so bizarre. But the thing was, we ended up, getting it, and so then here we had it, so we had to do something. So after we got it, we called and told them we wanted to bring it back and everything. So we went to take it back, and they ended up bringing out another one. And I was in the car with the boys, and Warren was in there talking to him, and I said, the only way I'm going to feel good about this, and my intuition's going to feel good about this, is if you open up that box and make sure all the parts are there, because I wasn't going to do that again. I mean, it was like an hour drive from here, to get over there, an hour and 10 minutes even. But anyway, we got back here with the new one, and of course opened it up, and all the parts, he had already looked at it there, and all the parts were there. And so I say to them, God bless you. But when we're in a situation and we're feeling those vibrations and we're feeling uneasy, guess what? God's talking to us, and we got to listen. And we probably should have just walked back out of there. But the second one they gave us was actually better and not broken. So, we got it out there with all the TV trays. Worked out okay. And listen to the vibrations that are around you, because it is an intuitive, instinctual feeling that we have within us. Like I said, being a mom, you get those feelings. Being around your husband or your spouse or whatever, you will get those feelings. You'll know when something, isn't quite right or whatever. And we send out these vibrations, believe it or not, by the power of our thoughts. So of course we're back to what we think is going to manifest. But when we get these uneasy feelings and vibrations, we also have to ask ourselves, well, am I just making this up, thinking this in my head, or is it really actually telling me something? And that's where you have to take that breath and know. But vibrations means a person's emotional state, the atmosphere of a place, or the associations of an object as communicated to and felt by others. So that's what I'm talking about, that feeling that you know, okay? That intuitive idea that you're picking up on vibrations. And when you feel comfortable in those vibrations, it makes a huge difference. We know that we send out vibrations and that everything has a vibration. And we know that we can feel them and get that sense, and we know when we need to communicate with somebody or when we don't. We know when we feel comfortable, when we walk in a door and feel something other than a good vibration, I like to say. And we can prevent ourselves from falling into a bad situation just by listening to our vibrations. I know we've all pulled up someplace, gas station or whatever, and then got that weird feeling. Listen to it, and don't let yourself be in a trap. The good thing, though, is that if we are open and we allow our senses to be free and vulnerable, and there are no bad situations, believe it or not, because even when we're getting that feeling, we can switch it into saying, okay, why am I feeling this, and how can I make it okay? That's the power of our minds. That's the power of our thoughts. We know this. And we can use this natural spiritual sense to guide us and allow us to be open to vulnerable vibrations. Thank you for being here today. God bless you.